Hi, it's Maria, and today I'm here to do part 2 of my recent reads wrap-up. If you missed part 1, I'll link it down below. It was me talking about my least favorite books from the past few months that I've read, and today I get to talk about my favorite books from the last few months that I've read. Quite a few of these are books and series that have made it into my absolute top favorites, and I can't wait to tell you all about them. The first book that I'm going to talk about is one that I read back in November, and it was a buddy read with Rita over at Rita Book. I will link her information down below. She runs an amazing bookish candle company, and she has a really cool YouTube channel where she does these really fun themed TBR videos, and basically she's one of my favorite people, so I will link her information, like I said, down below, and you should absolutely go check her out. The book that we buddy read together was Roar by Cora Carmack, and this is a story that follows a princess called Aurora. Aurora is part of a Stormling family, and these Stormling families are the rulers of the kingdoms, and they basically protect the people from storms that come and besiege the kingdom. They have these magical powers that allow them to battle and kind of control or even break up the storms that attack the various kingdoms. And Aurora is part of the Stormling family, but she herself has not shown any powers as of yet. And in order to not dishonor her family and kind of lose their position as the rulers of this kingdom, she has been hiding this as a secret for quite a few years. And at the point that the book starts, Aurora is about to be betrothed to a prince from another Stormling family in the hopes that this kind of betrothal will help her hide her secret and he'll be able to help protect her kingdom as her husband. And so we start off the story with her kind of torn between her duty to her kingdom and also not wanting to marry someone that she doesn't know. And then Aurora finds out that there might be another way for her to gain these Stormling powers and to fight the storms, and so she kind of goes off on a quest to figure out whether or not she can attain these powers. This is a book that I really enjoyed, and so did Rita, but I will say that it's not for everyone. Cora Carmack is primarily a romance author, so a lot of the male characters in the book have this kind of alpha male possessive thing to them, so if that kind of thing really bothers you, this book will probably drive you a little bit crazy. I just kind of rolled my eyes at it and moved past, but what I really loved about the book and what really got me interested in it is the idea of this kind of elemental magic. The storms and the way that magic is used to battle them in the book is just such a fascinating concept. It's written really well. The storms are very real and visceral, and you really get the feeling for the power of the magic and the storms themselves. And there's also this really cool concept with the heart of the storm and how the storms kind of have an aliveness to them that I really enjoyed. I hadn't really read any other elemental series before, so for me it was completely unique, and it was a really interesting magic system in that sense, and that was kind of the main thing that really stuck out to me with this book. I also really enjoyed Aurora as a character. She sometimes did things that I kind of was judging her for, and then there would be a reason for it, and so that was really fun. It kept me on my toes. It's definitely not the best fantasy I've ever read in terms of character development and things like that, but I really enjoyed the magic of the world and just the adventure that the characters took us on. And I'm really excited to pick up book 2 when it comes out. And I did another buddy read in November, and this one was with Marybeth, who is also one of my absolute favorite people here on BookTube. She is one of the first people that I got to know when I first made my channel, and she made hers, and she is the kindest, sweetest, absolute most supportive person I've ever met, and I'm really grateful to have become such close friends with her through BookTube. I'll link her channel down below as well so that you all can check her out and give her some love. And the book that we buddy read together was For Darkness Shows the Stars by Diana Peterfren, and this is kind of a persuasion post-apocalyptic retelling story. I haven't read Persuasion by Jane Austen, but I really enjoyed this book, and I'm kind of curious if any of you have read Persuasion, how it measures up. Let me know. This is a standalone novel, and it's set in a world where scientific advances and genetic experiments went really wrong and almost destroyed the population. So now we kind of have this movement that is anti-technology, anti-science, and we also have a class system that developed. We have two main characters from different class systems that we follow. Elliot is the female protagonist, and she belongs to the ruling class, and when she was young she fell in love with this boy who belonged to the servant or enslaved class, and he asked her to run away with him and she chose not to. And now 4 years later he's returned, and there's a lot of angst involved with his return, and also with Elliot being torn kind of between her draw to him and her love for him and her duty to the estate that her family runs. And there's also a really cool larger concept to it about science and technology versus nature and kind of ruling classes and enslavement and things like that. I thought the concept at the heart of the book was really interesting. I almost would have wanted more, but a lot of the book was more driven by the characters, and I really enjoyed that as well. There's a lot of angst between the characters, like I mentioned, and that was really fun to read. It really had me turning the pages. It was also really well done in the sense that you really sympathize with both of the characters, with Elliot and with the servant boy Kai that she loves, and you kind of see what drives their different choices, and you understand the hurt that comes from both sides, and that was really cool to read about as well because you understood kind of the obstacles that were keeping them apart. I will say I sided a little bit more with Elliot because I felt like Kai was being a little bit too mean to her in certain points, but regardless, I loved both characters and was really rooting for both of them to be happy. It was a really fun read. Like I said, it is a standalone and it's a super fast read because you just really want to find out what happens, and I recommend it if you really like angsty post-apocalyptic stories. Another book that is on this list is a book that I read for the holiday adventure-a-thon that I did in December, and this book is My True Love Gave to Me 12 Holiday Stories, and it is an anthology with 12 stories by different authors set around the theme of Christmas and holidays. It's interesting because I actually had an anthology of my least favorite books of my recent reads, and anthologies in general leave me feeling kind of weird because there's always stories that I absolutely love and then stories that I don't love, and it's kind of a weird mix of all that. This one did that too. There were definitely stories that I didn't like. There were quite a few stories in this that were actually kind of depressing, which was weird to me because who would write a depressing Christmas holiday story? I feel like that's not the point at all of holiday stories, but regardless, there were a few stories that I really loved. And I think what really put it in my favorites isn't even the book itself, but actually the experience of it. I read a story every morning with breakfast and the 12 days of the readathon, and it was just such a fun way to kind of get in the festive spirit and start off the day with a Christmas story that it really put me in a holiday mood. So I think that more than anything puts it in this list of favorites. My favorite story by far in it was Stephanie Perkins' It's a Yuletide Miracle, Charlie Brown. It was such a unique concept and adorable and made me so happy inside. I actually really wanted to pick up some of her books after falling in love with the story, but I've heard some not so great reviews about them, so I probably won't do that, but I absolutely love that story. The other stories that I liked were Rainbow Rowell's Midnights and Star of Bethlehem by Allie Carter. Those were some of my favorites. My least favorite story, also by far, was Polaris is Where You'll Find Me by Jenny Han. It was just a depressing story, and I don't like my holiday stories to be depressing, so I was not a fan. Okay, next up we've got another buddy read. This is a series that I've been buddy reading with Ren from A Bookish Balance. Ren is another one of my absolute favorite booktube people. She is lovely. Her channel is incredible. She reads a crazy amount of books every single month and a wide variety of books as well, so her videos are always a joy to watch. And buddy reading with her has just been an absolute joy because she always has such insightful comments to make. So again, I will link her channel down below and you should absolutely check her out as well. And the series that we've been buddy reading together is the Lumatere Chronicles series. Book 1 is Finnegan of the Rock, Book 2 is Four of the Exiles, and Book 3, which we are currently reading, is Quintana of Sharon. This series has made its way into my absolute favorite series of all time, and I think everyone needs to read it. It is incredible. This series follows a boy called Finnegan who, when he was a young boy, his kingdom was seized and cursed, and so some of the people were left trapped inside the kingdom and some of the people became refugees scattered throughout other kingdoms. And Finnegan is one of those refugees, and now as a teenage boy he has this desire to kind of gather up all of the people that were scattered and bring them back and restore the kingdom. And at the beginning of the book he meets a character that kind of helps set him on this path toward doing that. This book series is mind-blowingly good. The story really grows as you get from book 1 to book 2. You get to see different kingdoms and follow different characters in those different kingdoms, and the world really expands through that. This is one of the only fantasy series that I've read that actually has parental figures in it, and they're actually a part of their children's lives, but also don't take away or interfere with the story and the adventure that the children have to go on. The world is amazing, the characters are amazing. This series reminds me of Harry Potter in the sense that you have such a large cast of characters, but every single character is so fully developed. You get to know their flaws and their strengths, and you grow to love them all. And it's just such a well-written series as well. There's something about Melina Marchetta's writing that just feels so accessible and easy to read and keeps the pages turning, but also feels like a great mix between YA fantasy and adult fantasy. You've kind of got that perfect meld in there as far as the complexity that the story goes into. It deals with some very heavy topics, but in a way that I think is really well done. It deals with rape and abuse and discrimination and prejudice and loss. Melina Marchetta is amazing at writing tragic moments and humorous moments and lovable moments. Like I said, her characters are incredibly complex and her story is so dynamic, and there's such a great scope to it. And I just can't say enough about how amazing this series is. I highly, highly, highly recommend this series. I love it dearly, and I'll talk a bit more about the third book when I finish that. Next up, we have another series that has firmly cemented itself in my absolute top favorite fantasy series of all time, which is the Shades of Magic trilogy by V. Schwab. We have book 1, which is A Darker Shade of Magic, book 2, which is A Gathering of Shadows, and book 3, which is A Conjuring of Light. This series is set in a a world where there are 4 parallel Londons. One of the Londons has been devoured by magic, one of the Londons has forgotten magic, one of the Londons is starving for magic, and one of the Londons is thriving on magic. We follow our main character Kel, who's one of the few people whose magic allows him to travel between these Londons. And he finds himself in a bad situation when he accidentally brings a dangerous item from one of the Londons into another London. There's a lot more to the story, but I think it's one of those series that it's best to go into without knowing too much, because that way the first book can really surprise you. But I absolutely loved this series. The first book is my favorite just because I think it has the least pacing issues, and because it's the most memorable to me because it introduced me to this unique world and kind of took my breath away with that. One of my absolute favorite things about it as well is that it's written in a very cinematic way. V. Schwab has even talked about this in interviews, that she kind of choreographs every scene, and I really felt that. I felt like I could envision every single scene that this series had, which is rare for me because I'm not a very visual person. So I absolutely loved the writing style. It's apparently not a series for everyone, because a lot of people end up frustrated by the female main character in this series, and that kind of turns them away from the series. I didn't have that issue. Lila Bard is not one of my absolute favorite characters, but I had no issue with her and I did enjoy her. My absolute favorite character is Kel. I relate to him in a way that I've never related to character ever, and I absolutely love him. He is so precious to me, and I loved his relationship with his brother Rye. I loved the other characters, Holland, Alucard, and Lila as well, but those two were my absolute favorites, and I highly recommend giving the series a chance. Again, it's kind of weirdly one that people either love or hate it, but I think it's worth giving it a chance, at least for the experience of this unique world and magic system, and then you can kind of see where you stand with it. The other 2 books really expand the world and show us how magic works in this universe. It's definitely one of the most unique magic systems that I've personally read about. If you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that I desperately want to have Kel's coat, and V. Schwab's writing style was something that just really clicked with me, so I'm super excited to read more by her as well. I absolutely love this series. Okay, and the final 2 books that I'm going to talk about in this video are 2 books from a series. The first one is Amour Amour, and the second one is Infinny, and they are written by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I picked these books up on a whim because they are romance novels that take place in a circus setting, and if you don't know, I am absolutely obsessed with everything circus related, and I was really pleasantly surprised. The first book, Amour Amour, follows a girl called Thora who has always wanted to be part of the circus, so she goes to Las Vegas and auditions for one of the circus shows there, and then also crosses paths with Nikolai Lantsov and his family, who have been in the circus for generations, and the romance kind of takes off from there. This book surprised me by how good it was. The way that the characters meet felt very unique and very entertaining, and the relationship that they then develop is very healthy and supportive. They put each other's dreams first, and Nikolai is shown as a caring, protective guy, but who doesn't make Thora's decisions for her, which was really refreshing to see. Thora and Nikolai both felt very developed to me. Thora felt really relatable and realistic in the decisions she made and the fears she had, and you really grow to love Nikolai just like Thora does. He actually really cares for his family, and you really get to see those relationships develop. That's kind of the other thing that I was really taken aback with by this book, is that the side characters are all really interesting and really well developed. One of the side characters is also gay, and that's highlighted a little bit. The circus setting was also really fun to read about. It was definitely inspired by Cirque du Soleil, because you can see that the different shows are based on that, but it was still really fun to see the professional side of it and then the kind of auditioner trying to get into the circus side of it as well. I do wish there had been a bit more of the show aspects of the circus in it, but I still enjoyed what I did get. The second book, Infinny, follows another one of the Lantsov siblings, and it's more of a forbidden love plot. I enjoyed it as well, but not as much as the first book. I didn't connect with the characters as much as I did in book 1, and the kind of ending solution didn't feel as believable after the way that the obstacles had been built up throughout the book, but again, it was still a really enjoyable read, and again, you have more of that gay side character being featured. You have themes of bulimia and abuse being addressed, although I do think that the bulimia wasn't given as much seriousness as it should have been. The characters suffered from bulimia, but the book didn't really focus on healing that habit. There was a slight mention made at the end, but I think that there could have been more to that as well. But again, I loved both books. You really get to know the characters and love them, and the relationships between the different characters, whether romantic or sibling relationships, felt really real. Obviously, these are romance books, so they do have mature scenes in them. I kind of skimmed through them, not gonna lie, so I don't have much to say on that, but the world and the characters I really enjoyed, and if you were looking for good romance books, then these ones I would highly recommend. And that wraps up my favorite books that I've read in the last few months. Let me know if you have read any of these, or planning to read any of these, or any other comments you've got down below. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!